Hi everyone, Rachel here at Ditch the Diet. Welcome to episode number 45 of the Ditch the Diet podcast. So in today's episode, I'm talking to Dani Binnington, who is a lifestyle and family wellbeing coach that specialises in teaching yoga and mindfulness practice. And we discuss the ever-increasing stresses and strains of daily life and how we both manage this with mindfulness practices that you can put into play in your own life to help you manage any overwhelming circumstances or stresses that you come up against. I'm also discussing my struggle with anxiety and depression, as well as Dani discussing her struggles with anxiety and the small things that we have done that have added to our mindfulness toolkit over the course of the past few years and how it has completely changed and shaped our lives as a result. So if mindfulness and meditation is something that you are quite interested in but are maybe a little bit scared to learn about, maybe you think it's not for you, then have a listen to this and just listen to our experiences and allow us to give you the tools that you need to perhaps start to practice this for yourself. Enjoy this episode. I'll be back at the end to tell you more about where you can find out about Dani and about the Ditch the Diet Academy and anything else that you would like to know about mindfulness. Hi Dani, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. How are you this afternoon?
Hello Rachel, I'm very well. It's lovely to talk to you. Thanks for having me.
And you too. We're here today to talk about a few different things, including mindfulness, meditation and yoga and the benefits of that in the environment that we live in today. But before we get into that, I thought it would be a nice idea to sort of just ask you a little bit about your background, starting with, you know, how you got into what you do at the moment, and how you got into doing it, and a little bit about your story. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, sure. To me, I now practice mindfulness. I teach yoga. I run supper clubs where people come and cook with me. And I run a well-being lifestyle blog called Healthy Whole Me. And to me, it's all about holistic lifestyle and a holistic well-being. So that is how I eat, how I move, and how I look after my mental well-being as well. Mm-hmm. 5 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I was just sitting there watching the telly and I was having a grope in my armpit and I found a lump. Mm-hmm. And I was only 33 at the time. So when I took myself to the doctor, I thought it would never ever be cancer because I was young. And we think breast cancer is part of perhaps a postmenopausal community, mm-hmm. but it isn't. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I was a mummy already, so I had 3 little daughters and my twins were 2 and my other daughter was 4. So it's a real shock to the whole family. And initially, we just went into doing mode and I had surgeries and chemotherapy and radiotherapy, and we just tried to get through, which we did. Mm-hmm. And it was after then that my mental well-being was at such a low. I was riddled with anxiety. My fear of a recurrence was so high. I was, they had removed my cancer. I was in remission, but I felt more ill than ever before. Mm-hmm. And that's when I noticed I had to do something. I needed to become as active as possible in my own recovery and well-being, really. Mm-hmm. I thought the doctors had done their bit. They'd given me drugs, they've given me surgery, and now I need to make sure I recover initially and then come to a level of well-being, physically and mentally, that is brilliant again, because I just felt so ill. Mm-hmm. So that's when my journey started, really. And now I was discharged from the hospital. So it's 5 years on. But I would say it's been a long journey, and I've learned a lot along the way. And I just want to share that by being active, by looking for things, yoga helped me. It might not help you. You might hate yoga. Yeah. I might like to drink a green smoothie. You might hate it. Mm-hmm. It's about finding out what works for us. And it's about not giving up and keep digging. And I think that's the best advice I could give to anyone, whether it's a financial crisis people have, a health problem, or for anything really. There is always something out there that you can do to help yourself, really. Yes, I just keep chipping away.
Yeah, it's so inspiring to hear you talk about your recovery from breast cancer and the fact that you took control of your own. Obviously, the medical profession did their bit, and you decided to take control of your future, I guess. So where did you start? What was the first thing that you did, I suppose?
The first thing I did, and I don't think I should advise for anyone to do it, I had sleepless nights, I was riddled with insomnia, and I was on Dr. Google trying to find a cure.
Yeah.
It's 3 o'clock in the morning, and as you do, you try and find answers to all these ailments you might have. Mm-hmm. It's not the right thing, but I know a lot of people tend to go to an online search engine for answers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But what happened is a lot of diet, lifestyle related blogs and articles and studies and, scientific results came up, whether that was a specific diet to cure cancer or it was maybe a link between Alzheimer's and diet. Mm-hmm. There are so many links to our mental health and our physical health and how we live that I thought there must be something in it. Mm-hmm. My initial problem was that I was really, really confused because I didn't know what to do. You look on one site and it tells you dairy is your enemy. Mm-hmm. And you look on the next site and you think, actually dairy is okay for me. And the same goes for so many other things. Mm-hmm. Is meat, does it drive cancer? Does it not? I think as a non-professional, I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a doctor. It's really difficult to know what to do. Mm-hmm. So my initial answer was to cut everything out, and I went on the clean eating bandwagon.
Yeah, I've been there too.
Again, it's not something I would advise or suggest for anyone to do. Mm-hmm. However, I didn't know what to do, so it was the only thing I realized I could do. I was very regimented for a really long time. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you were as well, but I cut out so many major food groups. I was petrified if you had offered me a tonic water. Mm-hmm. I didn't eat my children's birthday cake, and quite frankly, that's quite sad. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been there too.
Have you been there? Yeah. But a couple of years down the line, or year and a half in, I think something changed, and I call it my personal food revolution. And I feel really, really passionate and really sort of quite intimate about that moment because something bigger happened. I realized, so what the clean eating thing helped me was to cook with vegetables. Mm-hmm. And to raise them and to love them and to come up with new recipes and to make it family friendly. But what I realized throughout my food revolution is that I wanted to focus on all the lovely stuff I wanted to eat. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to focus anymore on the stuff I shouldn't eat because I felt like the focus was wrong.
Yep.
So, initially when I focused on not eating eggs, not eating dairy, wheat, gluten, all of that, I thought, forget about that. I'm going to focus on what I want to eat, how I want to feel, and what I want my life to be like. And if that means I'll have a bit of cake every now and then, I will have that cake because my gut feeling told me it's about the 80% of the time and how I live that, and not about when my kids have a birthday or I want to go out and celebrate.
Yeah.
And then it started to feel really lovely, and then I started to enjoy it again, and now I cook food that is tasty, and I can cook for 20 people and they'll love my food. Initially it was quite bland and it all tasted a bit like cardboard. Yeah. But now it's tasty, and I feel quite happy to cook for a lot of people, knowing everyone will enjoy it. Mm-hmm. There's so much more that comes with food, isn't it? It's together and talking around a table, and I think it's so much more than just nutrients. And,
it really is. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit as well, about the importance of, and this is something that I teach the members of my academy, is that the importance of actually being mindful while you're eating, and not just while you're cooking and making the food, but the importance of community and connection with other people and spending time around the table, away from screens, away from everyday life, and actually being mindful about the food that you're putting in your mouth is such an important thing.
Yeah, because also there are studies that have linked a mindfulness practice with lower glucose levels and therefore lower decreased weight. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes And you know that situation. You might work and it's 1 o'clock and you're really hungry and you just go and get your sandwich or whatever you're having for lunch, and you carry on working and you have your first mouthful and it tastes nice, but the second time you look down, your plate is empty. Yeah. Do you know that situation?
Yeah.
And suddenly your food is gone. And of course you've eaten it. You can see the plate, but you haven't really tasted much of it. You haven't really thought about what you're eating. And then by the time you finish eating it, you feel a little bit almost gutted that it's gone without you noticing it. And you don't really tend to notice that you're full up either. So then you want more. And if there isn't more of what you have made for lunch, you'll have a biscuit or 2 or 3. Mm-hmm. And I think if we become a bit more mindful of how we eat and when we eat and why we eat, and focusing on what we eat, we will be noticing when we're full up, because we'll have a connection to our tummy. We will see our spoonfuls. We can smell the food. It's a really, really good starting point when we want to change our eating habits. It's just by becoming mindful of when we're eating, really.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's something that I feel really strongly about, because I think I was going to touch on the environment that we live in today is not an environment that is that contributes to health, really. When you think about it, the high level of stress, anxiety, the increasing number of people that suffer with mental illness, and the decrease in connection between people. We spend less time with friends, less time with family, and we seem to be kind of up against this lifestyle or environment where it's almost like not contributing to health at all. And it's easy to get caught up into that, caught up in that. And we know that high levels of stress contribute to a decline in physical and mental health. But what do you think is this is a big question. Let me start with saying that practicing mindfulness and meditation is a way that I have managed to get control of anxiety and depression. And for me, the environment that I placed myself in with the stress with work, I was diagnosed with chronic stress about just under a year ago. And the environment that I put myself in was so negative, but I couldn't get out of it until I found this one thing, and that was practicing mindfulness every single day until it became something that I craved just as much as I used to crave a bag of Maltesers.
It'll be interesting to hear from you, because I'm sure all of our listeners would love to know how you started.
For me it was really probably the easiest way that most people would be able to get started, and that was by using an app on my phone. So I used an app called Calm. It's got a little blue logo. And I had, my biggest problem when I was going through a period of really chronic stress, or acute stress, I suppose, that built up over time, was sleeping. I had an intense insomnia. I could not get to sleep. And even if I could get to sleep, I couldn't stay asleep. I was really sleep deprived. I was just I love my work. I absolutely love it, to the point where I will lose sleep doing it. And I will sit here until 2 or 3 in the morning sometimes and not even notice what time it is. So I wasn't doing myself any favours at all. So getting myself back into a sleep routine. So I used that as a sleep aid in the beginning, because they have sleep meditations, and that was the only reason that I used it. So I used it before I fell asleep at night, and it got to the point where I was falling asleep before the 10-minute meditation had even finished. So I'd wake up the next morning. Amazing. And I would have been oh God, I never even heard the end.
Oh, Dani, I'm so pleased to hear.
But I did it so many times for so long, and the same one, that I could probably recite the whole thing to you. It's like learning the lyrics of a song. I knew exactly what she was going to say and in what order. And it was really as soon as I put it on, I felt like someone had just wrapped me in a blanket and just said, "It's okay, you're going to fall asleep." And I still use it now, although I don't use it all the time. So I started with that, and then I started to listen to some of the other ones, because that app has really developed quite a lot over the last year, and there's lots and lots of new things. And now I know if I haven't used it for a few days. So that's what I started with. I then went to some meditation classes in Glasgow, where I live, and I wasn't really very regular with that because I was very sceptical in the beginning, and I kind of went and I sat and listened to the person talking, and I was thinking about what I had to cook for dinner when I got home, and how many emails that I might have to reply to, and your mind just, and I was like, this is just not for me.
Do you think it just wasn't for you, maybe, or?
No, because I kept going for a while.
Okay. Yeah, so something made you go back.
Yeah, because I'm a stubborn bitch. And I did really enjoy it, actually, after a while. And now I find it quite easy. I don't think easy is the right word. Maybe much more straightforward to be able to catch thoughts as they're coming in and sort of view them as clouds floating past.
Yeah. So, you know what? I'd like to add something really interesting to what you've just said. You didn't really enjoy going. One thing I'd like to say to people, mindfulness doesn't work better or doesn't work at all if you enjoy it. Mindfulness and the practice of it and the benefits, you can also reap them if you don't enjoy it. It's got nothing to do whether you like going or not. Just go. Yeah,
that's what I did, and because I knew that it was going to be beneficial for my health, because I'm a bit of a science geek, and I had, I know that it works. So I haven't been doing it very regularly recently.
It's there for you, and you've got a toolbox that is well equipped.
That's it, yeah. And I find that the app itself, just the accessibility of it, it kind of goes against what I believe in, that taking your phone to bed and having it switched on, but it really did help. It's just helped me so much, and they have emergency meditations on it. You can literally switch the app on, press a button. If you're, I don't know, I have a bit of a fear of public transport, so sometimes I get a bit anxious on trains and buses. So if I'm feeling a bit anxious, I'll stick my earphones in and put that on for 10 minutes, and it just brings me back into the room. So that helped me. But mindfulness is just it's a different thing for everyone, I suppose. Yeah,
and I think in general, your problems with stress and not being able to sleep, it's horrible, isn't it? It's horrible when you're lying there at 3 o'clock in the morning, you can't sleep, you're going to be really tired, you worry about the next day even more. But, high levels of stress and anxiety and mental illness is on the up. The problems are on the increase, so you're not on your own. Everyone that will listen to our conversation today will probably know someone, a family member or a relative or a friend, who suffers from mental illness somehow.
Yeah.
Because a sixth of the population in England suffer with a mental health problem. And 75% to 90% of all people that take themselves to the general practitioner, they go there for a stress-related ailment. And that is so high. I always, that's nearly 90% of everyone turning up to the GP goes with something that is stress-related.
Yeah.
2/3 of today's employees feel overwhelmed. 75% of managers feel they're working above or at full capacity.
Yeah.
And it's really, really hard to put your fingers on it, on exactly what is happening. Another thing we know is that mental illness is on the up, in particular in children and young adults and teens. 3/4 of all problems are established by the age we turn 24. And again, it's very hard to know exactly what's gone on there. We might think smartphones, tablets, advances in technology have really improved the way we all work in many ways. Help us share information, we collaborate more easily, we speed up communications around the world. But I think the significant downside is it's nearly impossible to switch off. That's one thing. And in general, there is economic uncertainty, political uncertainty. People worry about Trump. So media, the influence of the media in general, distressing news. It's getting worse. Every time you watch the news. It's bad. It's bad news, really.
Yeah.
And also rising expectations of what life should be like. They've all been suggested as possible causes.
And I couldn't agree more.
So I think perhaps, you are coming from, it was an overload of work and you've done something about it. Yeah. Sometimes it's a little bit more subtle. People might have migraines. People might have a bad backache that comes from really sore shoulders. There's physical problems that we might have, but the origin is because we're stressed.
Yeah. It's such a huge issue.
Yeah. Like having difficulties concentrating or feeling flat and uninspired. Even skin rashes or problems with your digestion. A lot of them have roots.
Yeah, that's it. For me, it manifests as digestive issues. For me, I know as soon as my gut starts to act up that I have to take action really quickly. For me, I have a friend who always gets a really bad sore left shoulder.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's debilitating for her. Like it feels like she's done herself a really bad injury. But it's stress manifesting physically, and there are so many different ways of stress manifesting, and it's so difficult to figure out what to do about it, because when you go to the doctor with stress, I don't know about you or anyone else's experience, but I have been back and forth to different GPs about stress, and only just recently managed to get a slightly different prescription, but normally it's antidepressants, anti-anxiety drugs. But recently I have a great GP who actually prescribed exercise and meditation things, so that's on the rise. That's changing, but mindfulness really helped me. So if you were to give a sort of definition to mindfulness, so someone is maybe listening at the moment and is wondering what on earth we're actually talking about. You're right. And also we will talk about it as well. There are different ways of practicing mindfulness. If someone listened to what you said earlier of going to a class and thinks, oh, that's my worst nightmare, then I can reassure you there's lots of other ways you can practice mindfulness. You haven't got to go to a class that you don't want to go to. No, exactly.
But in general, mindfulness is actually quite a pretty straightforward word. It suggests that the mind is fully attending to what's happening, to what you're doing, and to the space you're moving through. Because often we worry about the future. Like I was petrified of the future. Every day I thought something bad could happen to me again. I could have a cancer recurrence. Something else could go wrong. So there's a big worry about the future. And sometimes when we can't navigate our thoughts, we dwell on the past. Like how often have you walked somewhere and you've had that nagging comment that a colleague said to you at work, rushing through your head over and over again? We just can't control it. But which means we're not in the present moment. But actually, mindfulness is the basic human ability to just be fully present, to be aware where you are, what you're doing, and to not overly be reactive and overwhelmed by what's going on around you. Like I said earlier, news, political things, economic things, to be, make sure this isn't overwhelming bad news to you.
Yeah.
And I think it involves acceptance. It just means that we pay attention to our thoughts and our feelings. And to me, the most important thing is to mention here by not judging you. You are not bad for being so stressed that you can't sleep. There is no right or wrong in the given moment. Mindfulness, you notice how you feel, and if you feel angry, there is probably a good reason for you to be angry. If you feel really low and depressed because you've been arguing with your partner for the last 3 months, this is a good reason. Mindfulness isn't here to change you or to change who you are. You can be exactly how you are and be mindful. We're just being a little bit more aware of how we're feeling, and that gives us access to then maybe realize why we're feeling that way, and then we can make changes.
Yeah, exactly.
And the thing about mindfulness, it's not about feeling happy, being positive, and always being optimistic.
See, I think a lot of people have that idea that mindfulness is for people who are very positive all the time, or people who have really got their shit together.
That drives me absolutely insane. When people said to me, you just got to be positive. Do you know, sometimes I wanted to slap them.
Yeah. I've been there.
There were days I could hardly get out of bed, and I thought, please don't tell me to be positive. And then when I wasn't positive, I felt perhaps guilty, thinking, if I get ill again, perhaps is it going to be my fault because I wasn't able to be positive all the time.
Yeah.
So it's not about being optimistic and positive and happy all the time. And also, you don't have to whilst you practice mindfulness. For some listeners thinking, do I have to burn incense? Do I sit cross-legged on the yoga mat? No.
No, you don't.
It just recognizes and cultivates the best of who you are. And I think that is so lovely about mindfulness.
Yeah.
Because in general, I don't know if you drive, but people that drive, you take your car for a service. Yes, we do. I descale my kettle. Yes, I do. I clean my windows. I have my hair done every 8 weeks or something. We maintain objects in our life and physical things and to look good, and people go for facials. But we don't treat our mind for a little bit of a break. Yeah. And I think that's what gets me all the time, most of the time.
Yeah, so true.
It's a mini break. Mindfulness, we're not talking about sitting there for 45 minutes meditating. Mindfulness can be a lot, and it can be 10 minutes a day. Yeah. And if you think about it, in the 12 hours, and most of us are awake for much more than 12 hours, that's 720 minutes. And I'm saying spend 10 of those 720 minutes being mindful. It is not too much to ask,
No. And I can say from personal experience that 10 minutes it's like changing the game for me.
Yeah.
10 minutes is absolutely nothing. Like, even if you have to set your alarm for 10 minutes earlier in the morning, it's such a small space of time, and it makes such a huge difference. What different types of mindfulness are there that people could possibly look into trying?
Yeah, so you spoke earlier about you have apps, you went to a class, didn't you? If we split it, there is, let's say, a formal mindfulness practice and a more informal mindfulness practice. The formal practice could be a mindful meditation. So you spend a chunk of time, 10 minutes or 15 minutes or maybe 45 minutes, whatever you can spare. You can listen to a guided meditation track like you did. You can focus on your breath. You can focus on the sounds in your room. That could be from the dishwasher to the fridge, just noticing what you can hear. So that can include a sitting meditation. The picture people have in their heads that you sit somewhere cross-legged, hands on your knees, sitting meditation. You could draw the awareness to your breath. You could do a walking meditation. I don't know. We all walk, and so many people look on their phone. It's a bit insane. Every time you walk somewhere, you could go through a little walking meditation. You can experience your feet making contact with the earth. You can start noticing the seasons, the change in leaves, in weather, people around you. Put your phone in your pocket, turn it off. And by the time you get to your destinations, I can guarantee you will feel like you've had a little sleep. It's lovely. Yeah,
the walking one is another one that I do regularly and can highly recommend, especially this time of year. I find this time of year, like and autumn's like my favourite season, and it's so many things to notice in autumn when you're out and about.
Things to notice,
yeah, and
also to notice everything changes. And I think I feel so inspired by nature, which I love, which is why I love a walking meditation. The leaves drop now; they all change. The trees start looking bare. But we know it's just a cycle and things change again, and spring is just around the corner.
Yeah.
And that always gave me hope when I was feeling really low. I was thinking, I don't think I'm going to feel this bad for the rest of my life. Surely it'll change at one point. You've just got to have a bit of patience and work at it.
Yeah. I absolutely love that outlook. And you teach yoga, right?
I teach yoga. So my access for mindfulness or to mindfulness was through yoga. When I first stepped on the yoga mat, I still wore a wig on my head, and I was worried that would slip off, so I put a hat on my head. So can you imagine? I looked like a total numpty at the end of that yoga group with a wig and a hat. And I was just so worried my wig would slip off every time I was in downward dog, and I just I wasn't relaxed at all. However, I realized that the hour and a half I spent on that yoga mat, I wasn't worrying about the future, and I wasn't dwelling on something that happened to me in the past. And that was like a revelation. It was like, oh my gosh, I've got to do more of this, because I wasn't feeling great, but I was feeling okay. I wasn't trying to feel amazing. Now I practice yoga. Literally, Rachel, it makes me feel amazing. But then I was just getting back to a stage of feeling all right. And that knot in my tummy that my anxiety gave me all the time, that sort of released slowly. And my yoga teacher was very, carefully drawing attention to our kneecap, to our thigh, to the outer edge of our feet, and to just draw attention to parts of your body. That is mindfulness. And that was the mindfulness access for me. And that was a step to meditation as well. So yeah, through yoga, I think there's lots of, like with mindfulness, there's lots of different yoga practices out there. And I think it's finding out what works for you. Do you practice yoga?
No, I don't actually, but I'm smiling because it's been something that I've wanted to start doing for such a long time. And I can't give you anything but excuses as to why I haven't started yet. But
many people feel like that about mindfulness as well, because we sometimes just don't know where to start.
That's it, yeah.
The more informal way, for example, of practicing mindfulness is a great starting point for a lot of people. You could mindfully wash your dishes.
Yeah.
Where you say, actually, I'm not going to think about all the jobs I have to do later. I'm actually going to notice the water, feel the sensation of the warmth, the bubbles on your hands from the soap maybe. You can slow down your movements, pause for a moment, take a deep breath, and then watch yourself how you put the plate to one side and start on your next cup. So that is being mindful. It's just because you're drawing the attention to what you're doing. And the more we practice this, the better we will become at it. It's the same with everything, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can then become a bit more mindful in listening to people, which is amazing, because your communication and relationship skills are just going to get better.
Yeah.
You can shower mindfully. You can move mindfully through your space. You can practice self-compassion, breathing. I don't think mindfulness needs to be the app or the class in general. If that is too far-fetched for people where they're at right now, because we've all got a different starting point, we could say, I'm just going to mindfully fold away my washing without swearing at it, because I hate doing it. So I think that's a nice starting point, really. And the same with yoga. If you think I'm a little bit wary about going to yoga class, it's trying a few different ones and seeing where you feel comfortable.
Yeah, I think that's it too. Like, if you are considering a form of mindfulness practice or yoga, it's not to get too bogged down on the details and worrying about doing the right thing and choosing the right thing. It took me a while to get into doing it. And luckily, I guess, the app for me worked. It didn't work straight away. It's like anything else. The first time you do something, you think, oh, don't know about this.
Yes.
But it's the repeated practice. And it is something that you need to repeat over and over again, isn't it, to get the real benefits of it?
Yeah, and like I said earlier, is to not judge it, not judge the individual mindfulness practice too much. I always say at the end of a yoga class, I say to people, you've done it now. Don't judge it. Don't reflect on it too much. Just move on. It's done. It's part of your past. Just move on. And I think the same applies to an individual, single mindfulness practice. It's never going to give you exactly what you need in that moment. It's practicing it over a longer period of time, ideally daily, small chunks of time, that will really give you the benefits that you're looking for. Because it's a way of living, and we can all do it. I think that is the most important thing, because we all have the capacity to practice mindfulness in our everyday lives, and it will always improve your overall health and well-being.
Yeah. Exactly.
If anything, it gives you the tools to a really well-stocked toolkit, and it gives you the skills to help yourself when you're in need, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. So if you were to give the listeners a little toolkit to take away with them from listening to this episode. Now, you've spoken about a couple of things in emails that we've been bouncing back and forth to each other. We spoke about mindful walking, but you've also got a simple technique that you call stop.
Yeah.
Should we talk about that for
yeah. So stop is a technique that really helped me when my anxiety made me feel so ill physically that I thought I'm going to throw up. I was about to faint. My heart was racing. Often I would have an app on my phone and my heart rate would be 160 beats per minute whilst I was sitting down. Mm-hmm. That's when people run a marathon.
Yeah.
But I was sitting down. So I had really severe physical effects as part of my anxiety. And I really needed to stop, pause, and sort of take a break from all of that to then be able to move on. Mm-hmm. And there is a technique out there, and it's called stop. And the S is for you stop whatever you're doing. So I would maybe be at home and I would just potter around and suddenly feel like really overwhelmed. I would think, I'm going to faint, blackout. I need to stop. So I'd remove myself. I'd sit down. You close your eyes. And then I just went through like a body scan. Mm-hmm. What did I notice? Was it my heart rate? Is it the knot in my tummy? Is it the breathing? It was really fast always. And I was just scanning through my body to really notice the sensations I was feeling at that moment of time. Mm-hmm. Then you take a breath. T for take a breath. And I would press my feet on the ground, and you would really get a sensation that you're grounded to the earth. You know that there is a connection, that there is a support network. It's the earth that supports you. And it becomes your anchor. Mm-hmm. Then you observe your breathing. O for observe. So I would notice how my inhale would go in my nostrils. It sounds a bit weird now maybe when you're not practicing it, but mm-hmm. you can just notice how the air is a bit colder when you inhale, how you can flood your lungs and chest when you inhale, how you can expand your ribs. And on the exhale, your ribs draw together and the air that comes out of your nose or mouth is a little bit warmer. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the P is for pause and just be. And I made sure I was maybe breathing there for at least 10 long inhales and 10 long exhales. Mm-hmm. And this simple technique of stop, S for stop, T for take a break, O for observe, and P for pause, is a very well and widely used mindfulness technique because it just breaks state, and then it allows you to make a much more informed decision for afterwards. Mm-hmm. If you want to do this without having an attack like I did as such, you could do this once a day. Mm-hmm. You could make yourself a cup of tea, sit down, and because the tea is too hot, before you can actually drink your tea, go through your stop techniques. Yeah. You pause, you breathe, you really listen to what your mind and body is telling you. And it just really helps calms you, and you feel connected and a bit more grounded, and you're much more ready to get on with the rest of your day, I think, in a more controlled way.
Yeah, I love that. I think I do that actually without even knowing that it was a thing. No, it's definitely something that I use, like the change and just stopping whatever I'm doing if I start to feel anxious. And sometimes it can take a few minutes, sometimes it can be longer than that, but it's definitely a great one.
I think the biggest hurdle in the beginning is that often we feel really stressed and anxious because we think we're really busy. Mm-hmm. And everyone's life is really busy. What I don't want people to think is by practicing mindfulness, they'll be even more busy. Mm-hmm. Because they're already busy. So if I'm asking a very busy person to spend 10 minutes of their time to do something else, that initially might make you think, oh, I haven't got the time. I'm going to be even more busy. Then I'll have to work late. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't work like that, because you will feel a lot more productive. You'll feel that the tasks you're going to do are much more enjoyable. There are so many benefits. So I'd like people to think, don't worry about the time you're spending. You will get it back tenfold. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you notice that initially you thought, when am I going to fit it all in? Because you were working till, what did you say, 2:00 in the morning?
Oh yeah, like when I was setting up the academy a few months ago, in fact, it wasn't that long ago, when I was changing my whole business model from a sort of one-to-one small group approach down into the academy. Yeah. I don't think I really slept a full night for the last probably 2 to 3 weeks in the lead up to opening. That's when I would be, working till that time in the morning and not even realising that was the time.
Yes.
But if I hadn't had the meditation side of things and the mindfulness side down, I would have been a lot worse off. And it's, and I didn't, I guess in my head sometimes I would say I don't have the time for this, but I used to go out and walk once a day, and it wasn't a short walk. I would walk for about an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, which a lot of people would think would be a really long time, and it is a really long time. But for me, if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have slept at all. And that was one of the things, and I'm not, if you're listening and you think to go out for a 2-hour walk, you don't. But for me, although I was walking for quite a long time in the day, it made me so much more productive in other areas. Yeah. And, I had a lot of writing to do, a lot of technical setup to do, a lot of emailing to do, a lot of things. And
many people feel like that.
Yeah, like having
most people feel a little bit overwhelmed with everything we have to do. Sometimes I get up in the morning and I don't actually know what I have to do because I haven't checked my phone. Yeah. But I'm already feeling a bit overwhelmed. Do you know that feeling when you think, shit, how am I going to get it all done?
Yeah, I actually feel a bit like that at the moment as well.
Yes, I totally. And we all, it's so lovely to hear that because and I say that all the time when I teach yoga or when I talk about mindfulness. Just because I teach it doesn't mean I've nailed it. Because when you're in it and you're in your life and you see everything through your own little mind without, outside guidance often too much. You're in it. It's really hard to break out. And what's lovely about mindfulness, it gives us an opportunity to see things from a different perspective. Oh, yeah. And I think that's a really key word for me. Because, for example, stress and anxiety isn't always rational. You'll know that. No. My anxiety perhaps was irrational because I was in remission, Rachel. It wasn't like I was, I had cancer at the time that my mental health was at an all-time low. Yet I felt much, much worse than anyone could have thought I would feel. So it's not always rational. No. And when things aren't rational, you've got your own little perspective and that's your journey and you're stuck in a rut. And it's really important to break out a little bit and to see things from a different perspective because things aren't always the way they appear.
No, in fact, things are very rarely the way they appear at first if you have an anxious mind. And we can't change every little thing that happens to us in life. We can't. I couldn't have, you've changed your business. Yes, that was your choice. But as a result of that, lots of things would have happened that you had no control over. I have no control over my health all the time, do I? But I have some control, but really, people get all sorts of things and it's over and beyond their control. Political situations, I can't do anything about Trump. No. We can change the way in which we experience it. Yeah. And that always gives me hope. And there is another thing I love about mindfulness, and I don't actually know if it classifies as mindfulness, but it's the simple practice of gratitude. And I can't tell you how instantly it's like I pop a little happy pill. I love it. Yeah, I wanted to talk about this actually before we finished up.
Yeah, and it doesn't, so really it's, you do it as you want, whenever you want. I do it before I go to bed. And I just, I think about 5 to 10 things that I'm really, really grateful for. And I don't want people to think about them too long and hard. It could be like the fact that you're sitting in a warm house and so many households in the UK don't even have enough money to heat their houses and homes. It could be the fact that you have access to clean water, that you have a boyfriend that cuddles you. It could be the fact that you lost a bit of weight and that was your goal, and you could be so grateful for that. And it could be that you're grateful for good health. I started to be grateful when I had bad hip pain in one side. That was another psychosomatic ailment. I had really bad hip pain. I became grateful for the hip that didn't hurt me. And actually, why only ever focus on what hurts and what isn't great in your body or in your life? It's good to focus on what works and what you've got going for you. And there will be so much. And instantly I feel happier, calmer. I think actually I'm really lucky. Whatever my day, however shit it's been, when I do my gratitude practice, I think actually I'm a lucky person. And I live in a home, I've got a family, I live in the UK, which is a great country, and there's lots of things we can be grateful for. And maybe you can try it tonight. It's lovely.
Yeah, I think that's a great way. Gratitude, ending your day with being mindful of what you have in your life that makes you feel good, even if it's the small stuff. And I've actually been talking quite a lot about that on social media this week, is small pleasures. We had a conversation in one of my groups last night about small pleasures that give you like a really good feeling, because I found the book. I was actually visiting my mum last week, and I found a little book that I've never seen before, like sitting in her living room. Thanks, Mum, if you're listening. I've stolen it. It's now in my house. And it's like a book full of little things that give you that can give you pleasure in your life. So there's some of them are silly, like air conditioning if you're in a hot country, or decorating a Christmas tree. Folding washing instead of ironing it. Absolutely.
I love
all
it.
These little things. And so it sparked off a conversation yesterday with some clients about just thinking of the little things that make you feel like that you've had a great day, like when you split open an avocado and there's no brown bits. Like, all these little things, and just for a minute you can sort of forget about that overwhelming notion that you have so much to do, and just be grateful that your avocado is green all the way through.
Yes, exactly. And also, do you know what? There is a lovely way of, I always feel really connected when I practice mindfulness, and also with myself, because sometimes you hardly know how you're feeling because you're too busy. But I do it with my children. The twins are 8 now, and my Rosa is 10. But I do it with them, and I say in the evening, I sometimes say, we could be thankful for our feet, because our feet have walked us to all these lovely places today, and thankful for our legs because they've allowed us to run, and thankful for our arms because we could give each other a hug, and thankful for our fingers because we can hold hands with someone else, and our eyes for watching the world, and our ears. So you can go and scan through your body and actually could be grateful for so much. You're totally right. It's the green avocado that we need to focus on.
Exactly. I'm not going to say it's not disappointing when you do open one and it's totally bad, but focus on the green ones. So thank you so much for your time today. If someone wants to learn a little bit more about you, possibly go to your blog and have a read there, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Oh, yeah, that would be lovely. So the blog is called healthywholeme.com, and you can email me on there. You can comment on stuff. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook as Healthy Whole Me. For those that didn't hear it at the beginning, I'm Dani Binnington. And I think in general, I love everything that makes us feel a little bit better. And I think there is so much we can do to help ourselves, to help your friends and your family. And even now, when people have finished listening to us chatting about everything mindfulness, there's lots they can do to immediately practice it. You can pick up your kids from school, leave your phone at home, be mindful. You could just make a cup of tea and really notice the hot water. Flooding the cup. There's lots we can do, isn't there? So I'm a real believer that we can get up and do things and help ourselves.
Yeah, me too.
Yes, great. Which is why it's been so lovely to talk to you. Thank you for having me on your fantastic series.
Oh, no problem at all. I really appreciate your company. It's been great. Thank you so much. just like to say a huge thank you again to Dani for joining me on this episode. It's been a real pleasure to speak to you, Dani. And your website, your blog and your Instagram and things we will link in the show notes. So if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, you'll be able to scroll down and just click on the links there and find out more. I hope you've enjoyed it. I certainly have, and I hope you will find your mindfulness toolkit useful in the future. If you have any questions and would like to get in touch with me, my email address is rach, R-A-C-H, @ditchthedietacademy.com. You can get in touch with Dani as well. You can email her at hello@healthywholeme.com, and you'll find her both on Instagram and on her blog as well. The links are in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Ditch the Diet podcast. If you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, then please do so. It really helps me to get up the iTunes charts so that more people can find the podcast. So please hit the subscribe button, and don't forget there are 44 previous episodes to download, listen to and enjoy as well. Please get in touch if you have any questions. It's been a pleasure. I'll see you again next week for another episode of the podcast.